And we're back with another episode of Life Changing Challengers. Again, I'm your host, Brad Minus, and I have to tell you, I am so excited. This is going to be epic. This gentleman is so high energy, high powered. He's going to show you things and talk to you about things that you never thought possible. I have with me Joseph Drolshagen. Hey, Joe, how you doing?
Great. It's great to be here with you too, Brad. I'm pumped.
I'm really excited to get into it. So, as I ask all my guests, Joseph, can you tell us a little bit about your childhood? Where you grew up, what was the complement of your family, and what was it like to be Joseph as a kid?
Yeah, I come from humble beginnings. I grew up in a family with 5 children in a very low income blue collar family in Detroit, Michigan. Growing up, I remember watching my parents struggle. There was always financial struggle. My dad would work as many hours. I remember one time as a little kid, my dad was going to work. I was still in elementary school and he was getting sick in the bathroom. I go, "Why are you going to work?" He goes, "I'm not going to take a day off when I'm feeling like this. I'll take a day off when I feel great." And that's how he thought, and he would work as many hours as he possibly could. And I saw how it beat up the stress in the family, how it beat up their marriage and how it beat them up individually, eventually health problems. And I viewed all of that. And when I was growing up, I remember often thinking as a child, like, I didn't feel so much like a little kid as I felt like I was supposed to be doing something all the time.
Mm.
That I was always supposed to be doing, whether it was schoolwork, and I didn't get into school early on and stuff like that. So I didn't, have the honor role and things like that. But yeah, I just felt like there was always something I should be doing, and I remember like 9 years old, Brad, I went and spent the weekend at a friend of mine's house and his dad gave us $20 and told us to ride our bikes to Dairy Queen. In my family, we had to save up to go to Dairy Queen. So I went back home after that weekend and I walked in and I could just tell, I didn't know what energy was or things like that, but there was such a different feel between the two households. And so when I went home, I was like, "Man, you people, this is so different. It's so darker and heavier. And I don't know how else to describe it. I'm not going to live like you guys when I get older."
Can I ask, what did your dad do?
He operated heavy equipment, not for construction, for the steel industry. He used to operate cranes and things like that and such. So he did that. And then my mom was a court reporter for the federal court. So she would be up, like she would actually start work when we went to bed and work until we got up for school and get us off to school. And then she would go and sleep and stuff.
Oh, so she was doing shorthand while she was in the courtroom, and then she had to transcribe it after that.
I remember my dad coming home and eating dinner and then going, sitting in a chair, and he would sleep most of the night there in the chair. He was just so tired and so exhausted.
Wow.
And they still did what they could do for us. We had a pop-up camper. We used to go, they would take us 2 weeks into the Upper Peninsula of Michigan and we'd go camping and he would take us fishing and it wasn't often that we got to do that. But like one of the things my dad, every year, my birthday's in January, and probably for about 8 years straight, every year, the weekend of my birthday, he and I would go ice fishing. And Brad, we never caught a fish in 8 years. I literally took hot coffee from the thermos and poured it down my boots because my feet were so cold, which then, cooled down. And I almost did get frostbite from it, but I wouldn't tell him. And every year I would look forward to that time with him and I, getting to do that and stuff. And so, to me, that's a very good, fond memory of, and knowing how busy they were, knowing how stressed and pressured they were to find time to do things like that with us was, it was golden. It was beautiful.
I had a similar situation. My dad started in Fortune 500, but he would work like hours away. So you take him quite a few hours to get, a couple hours to get there, a couple hours to get home. By that time, he was exhausted. But then he decided that, no, I want better for my family. Then he went into real estate. And when you're at the bottom, you don't have a book or anything like that. He went into real estate. So now it's like, and he always said that I'm going to pick up floor time anywhere I can. So he'd constantly be on floor time. I'd never see him.
Yes.
So I get it. And then our little things were just like that, going to see movies. It was a normal thing from middle school all the way up through high school. Was Friday night was dollar movie, pizza, and, with the family. And I did that all the way through because I didn't see my dad. I did that all the way through high school without fail. So I get it. So you said you have got four
Four,
siblings.
four siblings and myself.
Are you still close to them?
Yeah, I still have
Oh,
relationships with all of them. My mom and dad both passed. I got to see an incredible love story in my life with my parents. They were married for 57 years. My dad passed away about 14 years ago of cancer. And my mom just didn't want to be alive without him. A little over a year later, she passed away in natural causes.
I've seen that more than once.
Yeah, that
More than
and
once.
to experience it firsthand, it really, really like it was like, wow. Because in the years growing up, it wasn't like that. They would have like heated arguments and things like that. And every once in a while I'd come about calling the lawyer. I didn't even know what that meant, about calling until I was older and stuff. But yeah. So I mean it's funny how like as much I got to see how big that teachings of them were and what I ended up learning and walking away with later on with seeing their life as well.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So you went to, let's jump into like high school. Did you do any
Yeah.
extracurriculars?
Nothing really big, honestly, until I got to be like 22 years old.
Okay.
I'm out of school. I didn't go to college right away. So I was getting a job first in a factory and this and that and stuff and started, trying to figure out what I was going to do. Part of my conditioning growing up was a man gets a job, supports a family, and hopefully lives long enough to enjoy some retirement, right? So you kill yourself until you're old enough to retire. And then supposedly you're going to have this great life.
Right.
Well,
You end up living to work.
and remember that promise. Yeah, I remember that promise I made myself at 9 years old that I'm not going to live like these people.
Right.
And then I get in my 20s and I get a decent job. I hadn't started in corporate America at that time, but I get a decent job. And I started realizing like if something came really easy to me, I felt like I didn't deserve it because I didn't work hard enough for it.
That's interesting.
And so these things would show up of certain things and not just once, multiple times. I would end up like getting to the point where I'm almost feel guilty inside of myself if I did that, I'm taking advantage. So I wouldn't heed those opportunities and take advantage of them. And then I started like I broke into corporate America in my early 20s and I had a construction company I started because you got to work a lot, right?
Yeah.
Continually work to get to that retirement age, to build that egg. And I struggled financially. I beat myself up. In corporate America, I started out in the ground floor in sales, and I was trying to build a territory and with companies like aluminum high pressure castings, like transmission transfer cases. I didn't know anything about them, so I'd go in the plant and learn about them, and then I'd go out and try and sell. And I'm selling, and I'm not really getting headway into it. And
So what do you mean by that? You weren't getting ahead by your
accounts. I wasn't getting new
Okay.
business. I wasn't adding new customers. It was, I'm making calls. I'm trying to call people to put into the funnel to start talking to about building clients or customers and stuff. And I just wasn't like, I was getting some, but very, very minimal. I found myself kind of at the lower end of the pack when the sales teams I was in and stuff. And so I did the only thing I knew how to do is I worked harder and I worked more hours. And I got to the point about year 7 or 8, that's how long this went, of building it up to where I was traveling 3,000 to 5,000 miles every week, building territories, calling customers, and just staying in that hustle mode. And I still wasn't growing. I added a little bit, but nothing near the effort I was putting in. And I couldn't figure out why are these people selling like crazy and they make it look easy. They laugh. They enjoy what they're doing. I couldn't stand going to work. I felt like I should have been fired any day. And I brought that stress upon myself. And, I was married at the time and I brought stress into that relationship and it just continued to flow. At some point, I started looking for help. I started with counseling. And then from counseling, I started doing like self-help type of programs and I didn't get change there. Then I went to like group type of programs. That didn't help me. I even went one-on-one coaching with some pretty big names. I got nothing out of it. So I started, every time I walked away from that with that belief more ingrained in my mind that there must be something the matter with me. Because you hear these people talk about the results. You hear all this stuff about the change and the testimonials and everything else. And I believed them, but I didn't get that. So I'm spending financial resources while I'm trying to build financial resources. It's not happening great. And I'm moving into the whole thing. Honestly, drove me to abusing alcohol
Oh, okay.
for about 4 years.
Wow. So you're in this job and you're working hard. It's a challenge for you. So even though it's hard for you, you don't feel guilty. So that part's out of the way because it's hard for you, right?
Right.
So
So instead of
now,
guilt, you have the
right.
fear of getting fired because you're not making your mark. I mean, there's always something there driving that, bad. I should feel bad.
And I think a great story for because I think most of the stories that I've told in recent episodes are things that are kind of off the wall, that the adversity that we talk about is something that's big. It's huge. It's something that's like way out of the norm. Narcissist, wives that were beaten, that type of thing. I think the story that you're telling right now is something that's a lot more common, that people don't feel like, well, this is just the way it is. I have to struggle at work and then I come home and you go on from there. Then you get up the next morning and you go to work and you do everything you possibly can not to get fired. And then you come home the next day. And it's a revolving thing where, as I had mentioned before, like you were doing, you were living to work, where we should be working to live,
Right.
you know? So that's super interesting. Do you remember the first time that you found that alcohol actually started to suppress some of those feelings?
Yeah, because my dad, he'd have an occasional beer, like a couple a year or something like that. Nothing, he wasn't using it. And for a long time, I didn't. Through a lot of my 20s, I didn't drink at all. Just through other life situations in my personal life. We have 5 pregnancies and I have 1 child. And so things like that added to it. And then other hardships we all experience is added to that heap of a guy who's walking around now 30 years old going, man, I'm broken. I'm not right, and not knowing anything more than that about it and stuff. And so, yeah, I can't remember exactly how it started. It was just like a reprieve for a few moments from all the stuff going on up here, from all the stuff in my life, situations, circumstances, all of that stuff. It was just a reprieve. And when we find a reprieve that makes us feel better, we want to do it more.
And I think that is a significant point right there, is finding, if you're in this situation and you find that one thing that gives you that escape, you
Yes.
better make a judgment call on, is that thing healthy? We all need escapes,
And
right?
it's hard in that mode, I didn't care about healthy. I didn't care about the longevity of my life. So I just wanted everything to quiet. I have people ask me today, man, why are you so energized and excited and stuff, like, why, how do you stay like that? And I go, why, really? Because I was so miserable in my life. I didn't want to live. I didn't try to commit suicide, but I literally didn't want to live. I didn't want to have to live through all of that struggle and keep it going. I didn't think I had a choice. As much as I bucked against it with these programs and coaching and all this other stuff, I didn't think I had a choice. And today, I get to live on that. So today, the way I live and who I am today, it's unrealistic based on where I came from, that I would be doing the things, that I would be even talking to you today, Brad, that I would be an ordained minister that got to give a talk to 350 ministers worldwide on prosperity, that I get to talk on stages in front of thousands of people and talk to them about how you identify and shift that negative bullshit, excuse my language, and start opening the doorway to the real possibilities and stepping into the power that we all have available to us. It's unrealistic.
Yeah. So in your 30s, you started to have some issues with alcohol, is what you're telling me. Did you stay with that company? Yeah.
until
During,
until I smashed a company car into a tree. That kind of ended a promising career.
did you,
That had to happen.
yeah.
I went to the hospital. I have nothing major and stuff like that, but I went to the hospital and stuff, and that had to happen because that was, and even that in itself wasn't really the full wake up call. It took another 8 months after that before I finally hit what's called bottom. And all of the things that happened to that point, all they served me so well. People will talk about alcohol is the enemy, drugs are the enemy, food's the enemy, things like that. Alcohol was one of my greatest friends because it humbled me to a point of really being willing to ask for help. I can't do this anymore. I can't live like this anymore. And that began a brand new start to life.
Unfortunately, we don't know that at the time, right? So at the time, wasn't your partner. It makes you feel better. It wasn't your partner. It actually was it was a downer, but it did get you to the point for you to realize that, okay, I'm done with this. I need to go forward. So what happened in that 8 months following the car accident?
Well, like I said, I lost the job. I ended up asking for help and started doing some things differently and being willing to listen to others and all the things you do when you're in a situation like that. And but one of the things that really happened that was pivotal there is I stopped all the personal development stuff. I stopped it completely and I walked away from it thinking, man, this stuff is all BS and doesn't work. And what that allowed me to do was go back into studying for myself. See, when I tell you, like, I would study things and self-studies and books, I would take a book and read it all the way through, and then I would read it again and create experiments out of the different sections of it and stuff that I would then practice to see what the outcomes were and things like that. So I've had a lot of growth, just it didn't align with the results I was looking for. I've done a lot of things. So after that happened, I ended up coming out a different way, I guess. Like that was pivotal in that I mean, that was the bottom. That's as bad as it got when that happened and everything that followed it and stuff. Didn't work for a while and things like that. And then I was like, okay, I'm getting clarity ahead now from the alcohol. I haven't had any alcohol in the past 17 and a half years. So it's been working well. When I did, I started looking at stuff. A majority of my studies prior to that were the conscious mind.
Okay.
Things like The Secret,
Okay.
things like affirmations, positive thinking, all of that stuff and everything. And at one point, I chucked all that stuff. I think before I started drinking heavy, I just chucked all that stuff and said, man, this stuff it doesn't work. And so when I came back in, I still had that passion inside of me. I didn't want to have to live like my parents live. And now I'm in my upper, mid 30s, say, and I'm going forward. And all of a sudden I never realized back then that whenever they talk about mindset alignment or total mindset, that there's the conscious part, which had been my entire focus, but there's also a subconscious. That subconscious absorbs what the conscious mind's thinking and all that. And in our conscious mind is the knowing of what we want, right? Our goals, our aspirations, our desires, visions, whatever you want to call them, come from the conscious mind. Well, that as I studied more and started understanding in that subconscious, there's what I call a motherboard that hosts all of our programming, our patterns, our paradigms, our belief systems, experiences that we might not have even had, but somebody shared with us are
Right.
embedded in that. And then that's the voice we hear in our head, but it's also that motherboard is what triggers our brain waves to the actions we take or don't take. So I can know exactly what I want in my conscious mind. But if I have my subconscious flooded with lack and negativity, and it's got to be hard, and who you think we are, the Rockefellers, money doesn't grow on trees. That's what's playing through. And as long as I have that lack mentality, my subconscious will not allow me to trigger the brain waves to take the actions that will lead in that what I want. It tries to keep us safe and secure in our comfort zone, ultimately.
Right. So I don't remember who talked about this, but there was something you call it the motherboard. A lot of people call it the monkey.
Well, the monkey in our head.
Yeah, but that is the monkey that wants to keep you safe.
Yes.
Right. It's protecting you,
Yes.
but it's laden down with, like you said, patterns that we've seen, done, and created for ourselves. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. They were modeled for us and we learned them. Like I tell people all the time, our parents, the people who raised us, they did the absolute best they could do for us. They loved us the best way they knew how, but they didn't know these things.
Right.
They didn't know that they had gained them from their parents, and now they're planting those seeds in our minds. And they didn't know that. They're just trying to help us. I remember growing up, my mom and multiple of my teachers would tell me, Joey, some people are meant to work with their head and some people are meant to work with their hands. And you're going to work with your hands like your father. So I went to school with that being my lot in life. Why the heck would I apply myself in school or think about a college or something like that? I do have a college degree. I'm the first child in my family to have a college degree. I'm the first child in my family to break way into white collar and to build up to a vice president of sales. I'm the first child in my family to break away from then leave all of that to do what I do today, resign from it to do what I do today. It's unrealistic that I'm doing what I'm doing, because once I understood that subconscious, and then I got somebody that could help me start identifying those things, because we can't pick them out for ourselves because we're so used to living that way. So as they started helping me find these things, as I started studying more and more on how you shift them, and then the tools that the person that was coaching me had, all of a sudden I started shifting these things. I didn't, like there was tools I was following, but I could start telling him my results. All of a sudden, the same person, I did change the way I did things, but even some of that, I wasn't exactly sure what I was doing different, but I was just going about life differently. And all of a sudden, I'm starting to get like more customers going in, more people I'm calling. I'm going, hey, really like to meet with you. I work with so-and-so. And they go, yeah, let's make an appointment. Come on in, or I start getting a little more contracts than what I was getting, business awards and things like that. Ended up maybe a little over a year's period. Now, all of a sudden, instead of getting contracts for 15, 20, even $100,000, I'm picking up contracts for $18 million, year over year contracts. I get the contract for $22 million a year later from there, and picking up another contract that the highest I've ever gotten was a 5-year, multi-year, $25 million year over year contract, and instantly took an organization from 50 million to a $75 million organization.
Wow. That's great.
And Brad, I didn't travel near the level I was traveling.
You found a way to work smarter, not harder. So, all right. So we need to dig into this just a little bit. So we got you've been off the sauce for 8 months. You've ditched all of the self-development. So who or what was the organization, or who was the person that first started to help you start to realize this?
When I had thrown everything away, and then I don't know what drove me to going back to that specifically, the mindset. Like, I can't say there was something, maybe something I heard or overheard, or maybe something from what I had read prior popped up and brought but I was just led to looking at total mindset.
Right, but you had mentioned a coach or
Well,
somebody.
yeah. So once I started looking into it, and once I started hearing about understanding the two parts in the mind, the conscious and subconscious, once I started understanding more of the subconscious, I found somebody who worked with the subconscious. I started reading books by like Joseph Murphy, the subconscious mind, and things like that. And I jumped into anything I could find. I was truly, passionate and driven within me. And so then I found somebody who would work on it, and then I worked with that person, and they started helping me see the conditioning that was pulling me back from who I wanted to be. And as we did that, he had some tools. I've developed tools of my own that are now within the SMT method and stuff that work very quickly. And so it started building. I had no idea I was going to be a coach. I had no idea I was going to develop this SMT method. And I had way no idea that it would have the impact on people's lives. Just incredible, beyond anything I ever imagined.
Amazing.
It is.
So what can you identify the switch? Just the one piece, that one thing that you did, or the one thing that you practiced, or the one thing that you reconditioned yourself with, that turned it from, not being able to, get very many accounts, to a point where you're starting to get these big giant 15 grand and then 100 grand and $1 million contracts. What was that one piece?
Yeah, one of the quotes I love is, it says that successful people don't do certain things. Successful people do things a certain way. And so some of the things I would call up with the coach, I'm like, okay, so how do we do this? How do you do that with a lead and things like that? And what I had to find, and this is really ingrained throughout the entire SMT method, is I had to find ways of doing things that truly made me feel good. They weren't overexhaustion and things like that. So often we see these things, and that's what a lot of the other programs were, is they said you do A, B, and C, and you're going to get D. But I did A, B, and C and never got D. So it helped me to start laying out what is my unique pathway to get to where I want to get to, because it's never going to be somebody else's. And so that's really what that coach helped me do, is start finding ways of doing things that were aligned for me. They made me feel good to do. So I wanted to do it more often. They opened up my attraction factor. So the things I was doing started attracting other things into it, people into it, things like that. When I talk to somebody on the phone, I was no longer, can you please see me? Or not that I did that, but like coming from a begging kind of place, like, please let me set an appointment, to that whole thing about like, I got something I'm really excited to share with you. And so more people are saying yes. And it was just changes, but it was all over, like to list out what they were, but, and that's one of the things that I have built into the SMT is developing systems of accelerating habits that are unique to the individual we're doing. So if I work with realtors, for instance, I don't have that whole litany of things they have to do to be successful anymore. I have them throw that away, and we start talking about, what do you enjoy doing with business? Well, I enjoy closings. Okay, how do you enjoy communicating and finding those people and this and that? And some people do a great example of this, Brad. You ever see somebody do a social media live and you can tell they're uncomfortable, they don't want to be there?
All
How
I have
long
to
do
do
you
is look
watch
on the
that
screen.
for?
Not very. No, it hurts to watch it.
It does me too. Yeah. That's awesome you said that, because I do too. I feel so bad for the person. Now, you ever see somebody do a social media live and they're home, they're in their wheelhouse, they're lit up, they're excited, and we watch much more, the whole thing or much more of that one, right? That's somebody who's in their alignment with doing it. That's something in their wheelhouse. So do that more often. So the person who makes everybody uncomfortable, who listens to it, that person shouldn't be doing that. But there is something that would light that person up. So it's understanding and figuring out those things. And as we start identifying those limitations, that subconscious conditioning that's no longer working, shifting that, it starts opening the doorway to find more of those areas that we enjoy doing. It lights us up to do, it opens up our attraction factor. And that's really the way the whole thing works.
That's interesting that you say that. I kind of do that with my clients. First of all, I always find out what are your circumstances. You've got kids, so you've got to get them off to school, blah, blah, blah. So we can find timelines that work for them. That's kind of logistical. But then it's like, okay, when you're training for something, do you like to do short intervals followed by long rest breaks? Or do you like to do long intervals with short rest breaks? Or is it long intervals with a medium rest break? What makes you feel better? Do you feel like you need more recovery in between or not? What makes you, when you're done with the workout, what makes you feel successful at that workout?
Yes.
And then, of course, then there's people that do triathlon and there's always one event they don't like, right? Then it's finding, then I've been finding, I ask them questions and I says, okay, here's questions to ask yourself while you're in the midst of it that will, and I don't want you to answer them. I just want you to answer. So for one instance, I'm not the greatest swimmer and I'm not crazy about it. I don't mind it, but I'm not crazy about the swim. I love the bike and the run. I can do that all day, but the swim is sometimes hard for me. But my question I keep asking myself is, all right, what would this feel like if it was the smoothest swim in the world? I don't answer it. I'm just like, what would it feel like? And then all of a sudden I find myself slowing down, getting more water and the whole bit. So then I started thinking about, all right, well, how do I do that just in my own personal vision? So for instance, the times that you've got something going on in your head and you have insomnia, right? You just can't stop the brain. The monkey mind is going crazy. You're trying to work a problem and you can't seem to figure it. I had to ask myself the same question. I'm like, all right, what would it feel like to be sleepy right now? What would it feel like to drop that out of my brain so I can now lay down, relax, and sleep? What would that feel like? Before you know it, I'm out. So little things like that, but I can see where you're going with that.
Anything we want to achieve, there are going to be times when we have to do something that might not be our favorite thing to do, right?
Of course.
Like I'll give you, for instance, for me, it's taxes every year. I've used my console of my truck, my office here, my home office desk drawer, and gather receipts in. So every year, come January, I got to pull all those receipts out and then sort them out by month, and then sort them out whether they're fuel, hotel, like all the meals, whatever it is, and sort the whole thing out. It would take a long time to go through and do that. And every year, come January, I'd be like, no, I don't want to do it. I don't want to do it. I'd get to the point a couple years where I had to have my accountant move out, my taxes, like, send the information in to move it out, because I just couldn't get myself to do it.
Right.
And then I came up with this thought of it. And I work with salespeople on the 10,000-pound phone and insurance people in every avenue now. There's availability. I go, I have to do this every year. I am embarrassed to hire somebody just because of how sloppy I am with it. So I'm not doing that. That's not an option. And so I every year I would start picturing me hitting the send button when I send everything to the accountant. And all of a sudden, I do that the first year, and it took me a long time to go through them all. And the second year, I started collecting them and doing it a little bit differently. And now I'm at the point where I have an envelope for every month. So at the end of the month, I take all the receipts, I put them in order, whether it's fuel, meals, hotel, things like that, and everything, and build them in, and I put them in the envelope for that month. And then at the end of the year, I take the envelopes out and I do 1 month, the next month, the next month. And it takes a fraction of the time it took. But even now, I just look at that the end game. And that's exactly what I do with people I'm coaching and stuff is I get them build up what I call a dynamic vision. And there's road mapping tools with the SMT method to do so. And then we get that vision. And what we do is we put that vision out and that becomes our reality. That's where we live from. So we live as that vision is our reality. And then anything that happens in our situation and circumstances is what it looks like as that vision is unfolding. So instead of those situations or circumstances determining there's no way we're going to do this or we can't do it or it's hard or they're just blips.
So you're reducing friction.
Absolutely. You're taking away a lot of the stressors and yeah, the anxiety builders and things like that and doing that. Because, when we're done building a dynamic vision, man, people like it's a stretch. It's not something like I tell people, if you know how you're going to achieve it, that's not a dynamic vision. It's a goal. What we want to build is so big that when we get done with it, it's like, I have no idea how I'm going to do this, but I'm on fire to do it. That's a dynamic vision. And when we build that up and then we start taking steps into it, we start utilizing over from where we are to where we want to be and developing systems of accelerating habits that start bringing results quicker and things like that, man. People get on fire for it. So it's not even like a push like the programs I used to take a long time ago. It's just my experience. It used to feel like I was trudgingly going through those and overburdened with like all the work. And with this is exciting because as we understand more, as we identify more of that and shift more of that, we start opening up possibilities and we see that very rapidly showing up in our life.
That is the extreme of what my message is. It's that you're talking about a full life dynamic vision. And I talk about challenges that are above you that you can reach and have all those small goals be on the way there. Like I constantly mention my one friend who had dropped 120 pounds over a course of 18 months because she decided that she was going to compete in an Ironman. On the way, she learned, what do I have to do to get up in the morning to do my workouts? What do I need to eat to fuel my workouts? So it wasn't about her, I need to lose weight, I need to get in shape. It was, what do I need to do to get on the start line and finish this big, giant goal that I've got? And it sounds like, so I have what you would call it's a dynamic vision to get up there. Now, to make money, I'm a project manager. I'm an IT project manager. That's what I do all day is like, okay, we're here. We need to get to here. And I got to build a roadmap and a schedule. And I use a team to find out what are the tasks that are going to get me there. What is my, and what is my critical avenue to get there, right? What needs to be done, what can be done, and what are the risks for not finishing it, right? Now, we want to be a little bit more optimistic on risks in our life, right? We know that they're there. There are things that we do need to plan for, but on the whole, when we're going after something, we tend not to think about that, which is fine. But on the whole, but that's what I do, right? Is that, okay, you want to climb Mount Everest and you've never hiked before in your whole life, but we know that that is a life-changing challenge that will, once you get to that summit. But how do we take someone that's never done that before and get there? We build, like what you said, a dynamic vision to getting us there. For me, it's like I build you a project plan on what you're supposed to get there. Now, there's a lot of mental stuff that goes into that.
Yeah, and where I specialize is rapid business growth. Like I've taken business owners from 7.5 million to over $22 million in 12 months, from $300,000 revenue to over $3 million in revenue within 12 months. I work with salespeople that are in that middle rung and help them within a year achieve top performer status within their company. So I'm able to go into organizations and help entire sales teams. When you're typically sales teams are limited with the number of top performers, and then a majority of sales are in that middle rung. Now think about switching that around, and the majority of your sales team is in that top, performer status, how much easier that business grows and how much more they can do and how they can expand so much quicker and stuff. And it's all about, so when I'm looking at that, I like the dynamic vision covers, like you said, it covers all areas, and there's road mapping tools that help to, to build that and things like that, and work with my client doing it. And because as a salesperson, to grow your revenues, ultimately, if you break it down, nobody wants to grow their level of money because then they have more money. They want to live a better life. They want to be able to take their family on vacation. They want to be able to do healthy things in their life and things like that. So it's really a dynamic vision. It's not just about building money. It has to include all those other reasons into it of what does that life look like at $22 million, dollars annual revenue versus 7.5. And we start building that into it. And I'll tell you, it's so awesome. Like the one company I helped go from 7.5 to $22 million within 12 months. They've been maintaining it for over 7 years now, that growth. And during that year of growth was the only time of my client's life that she took 5 weeks of vacation in that same year while that growth happened.
Wow.
And the stories go on with the testimonials and everything else, it's beyond what I even expected, Brad, to be totally honest with you. I didn't think it would bring about the changes in people's lives that it has.
That's incredible. I just want to step back just a little bit. So you got to that point where you shifted mindset and then you started bringing in big giant clients. And so how long did you end up staying in that Fortune 500 company selling for that company?
I ended up getting promoted to a vice president of sales for that company.
How long did you stay in it?
Probably 9 years, maybe 10 years in the organization. And then I went to an organization as a vice president of sales that was in bankruptcy and utilized the same exact tools to help them get back into profitability within months.
So now you got a track record.
Yeah. Before the SMT method was even developed.
Yeah, that was my next question. And that's where I was leading to, is like, all right, you spent 10 years there, then you went to vice president of a company that was in bankruptcy, got them out of it. At what point did you say, okay, done working for other people, and I'm going to go out on my own and I'm going to teach other companies how to do this?
Once we found new owners, I said, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. I resign. I've always wanted to live in the mountains. I was in Iowa at the time. I left there, came down to South Carolina. I live in the mountains now. I have a home in the mountains. And I came down here, didn't know anybody, and, started. I have certifications, education, everything else into the coaching. Right. I do and stuff, multiple of them. But I just came down here and started getting busy with meeting people and doing things and stuff. And I remember when I moved down here, now I was making a pretty good rate as a vice president. And I remember them telling me, you don't have to stay here. You can go live wherever you want. You don't have to come back here all the time. We just want to keep you on staff. And I had come down here. I had found out, about the Chamber of Commerce, things like that. So I set up a meeting to go to the Greenville Chamber of Commerce. And I was going in there. And at the same time, I was thinking about a couple customers for that corporation. And I started feeling guilty. And I just said, you know what? I'm not doing this. I'm not serving two masters anymore. So early on, I had to do multiple things to try and make it. And now I'm looking at going, how freaking crazy is this? That I can identify that and go, no, that's not how I want to live. And I actually have the choice to say that today. And so I called him up and I said, listen, I appreciate, you want to keep me on and everything, but I can't serve two masters. And I'm going to diversify within the works that I do from here forward. And that's what I've done.
Wow. Okay. That's an excellent revelation. And that would actually be like the top, like for a lot of people, that would be the top of the dynamic vision is I want that choice to work.
And you wouldn't have known to put that choice into my vision. But what happens is we start getting there. And so here's one of the other things that's really powerful is all of the programs I had taken, those one size fit all, you do A, B, and C to get to D, they're all based on logic. They're all based on strategy, and we're conditioned to be logical. We're conditioned. When I tell some people about like their client from 7.5 to $22 million, they go, there's no way. That's BS. There's no, and it's because they can't even perceive it because they live so logical. So we go through schooling, right? And it's building more of our conditioning within that subconscious. Because if you and I are in math class and we get a problem to solve, and let's say we're going through and solving it the way we're taught to and everything else, and you find a shortcut, you find a way of coming up with that answer quicker, and it's consistent from problem to problem, you're not awarded or rewarded for that.
Right.
You actually lose marks because you didn't show the work the same way I showed the work. And we're conditioned. It's almost like robotic conditioning when you go into doing things into business and things like that. And so one of the things that corporate did to me that was not a service is it really helped me become much more of a logical thinker that actually slowed my progress down. So when I'm working, the clients that get the most change, the quickest that I work with are like artists, musicians, things like that, because they don't have that logical. They're coming from their creative. So whenever I'm working with somebody in corporate, it takes a little bit longer because I have to pull them back away from, we have to break through the logic and start coming from a feeling tone of what we desire, what we want to experience, what things like that. And as we do that, all of a sudden things start showing up, coincidences. How many times have you built a plan to do something and the whole thing works out, but it's nothing like the plan? So many other things happen to bring you through that avenue. But what the logical mind will do is it'll keep us so busy strategizing, developing to-do lists and this and that and everything else. It pulls us away from even seeing those opportunities that are flying by us all day long. So if we can slow down a little bit of that and come from the vision instead, every single client, hundreds of clients that I've worked with over the past decade now, every person will tell you, all of a sudden it seemed like things started happening easier. And it's because what it is ultimately, Brad, is we get outside of our logical mind and tap into a universal mind where more is available and avenues are available. And we stop looking at how am I going to do all this, but we just build that dynamic vision of what it looks like when it's done. And we focus on that, and the how always shows up.
That's interesting. And I can almost give you an example. I was just thinking about that. So I've been a contractor 20 some odd years, so my resume kind of looks like I job hop, but it's written in there. This is a contract. It was a contract for a year, month. It was a contract for 9 months. So whenever I'm filling out applications or whatever, and they say reason for leaving, end of contract, that's the way it was. But that gives me a lot of experience. So everybody and their mother always said, okay, you should have a 1-page resume, maybe a 2-page resume.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, wait a second. I think the first person to look at my resume is a resume scanner that needs keywords. So my resume is like 6 pages long. And people tell me, how dare you? How dare you think that you should give people 6 pages for them to read? Do you really think people are going to look at that? You know what? I've never had anybody not look at it.
Yeah.
So that's again logical. And I'm like, no, I know that first person to look at my resume is going to be a resume scanner looking for keywords. I need to load that thing with everything that I've done. Otherwise it won't pop up.
And that's your unique avenue. Doing 6 pages in a resume may not work for anybody else ever again.
Right.
But finding what that is for them, that's exactly what this stuff is. And I imagine talking about what you do with coaching, it's very similar to that. Is you're doing uniqueness based on the uniqueness of the individual you're working at. And I'll tell you, our conditioning is so unique, Brad. I have 4 siblings. Whenever we talk about the stories of our youth and growing up, or whether it be camping or whatever, there's 5 different stories, 5 different versions of that story, because we all have unique conditioning. So we perceived it a little bit different.
That's the telephone game all over again, right?
It is.
That's nuts. So let's ask you a couple questions about the SMT method and what that means, and maybe just a 30,000 foot view of what that is.
Yeah, the SMT method, its full name is Subconscious Mindset Training.
Oh.
It's all about identifying that limitations in the things within our subconscious and identifying those, and then utilizing tools within the SMT to shift those and start opening up other opportunities, bigger potential in our lives. And as we do that, so the whole thing is set up, that's a starting point. And then what we're doing is we're bridging that gap from who we are now to who we want to become as a result of that vision. And in doing so, we're developing systems of accelerating habits. We're shifting out patterns and putting new patterns in place that work specifically for the individual that's going through the process. What's not, you hear a lot of these roadmap to success. I always laugh when I see those. We got your roadmap to success. You don't even know my freaking name and you got my roadmap to success. So this is all based on, and I tell people, I don't have your roadmap, but what I'm really freaking good at is helping you develop that vision and then moving into it and helping you, serving you and developing that roadmap that will work for you in your current situation as well as any other business or endeavor that you take on for the rest of your life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That is like, that's exactly, I mean, I do it in a lot more logical way, but that's like, okay, we sit down and we find out, all right, what is the project, we call it a project statement. And that statement would be not the dynamic vision, but the end game.
Yes.
What is this going to look like? And then we then further breaking it down from there. What do we need to come up with? What are the resources that we need?
Yeah.
What are the risks involved? Who are the people? And what are the step ladders we need to get there?
Yeah.
You come up with a dynamic vision, where they want to be, what they want to go. And then you find the critical path to get them there and the habits that they need. So that would be the tasks that would be to get them to that final dynamic vision.
Yes. And there is logic built into the SMT method.
Of course. Yeah.
Pathway, though, allows, and just like I'm sure with you, every client you work with comes up against things they weren't expecting that just come as a result. That's what I'm talking about with those things there.
Yeah.
You get them to that point, but even the time frame to get there, I imagine some people blow away the time frame that you come up with logic, and some people need a little longer. So that's what I mean as far as having that maneuverability for it to be unique for the individual. Every client I work with, at some point, they face procrastination. They bump up against something they're uncomfortable with, and they do anything in the world other to get around doing that one thing, and they will busy themselves so much. I'm the guinea pig for all the works I do today. So I know the tricks I can play up here to get me into procrastination and not do something I want to do, like my taxes. Every single person who develops that vision wants that vision. It's not them themselves that's blocking themselves from it and procrastinating, because we all want, like yesterday, we're fast food people, right? So we all want it as soon as possible. It's that there's something going on in that subconscious conditioning pulling them away from doing that. And so I help them identify what that is, shift that, and open up that doorway to experience that.
That's exactly. So it's them wanting an escapism from something they feel is hard. Sounds like you're finding a way for that hard thing to become more satisfying, more palatable. Something that's a little bit more palatable, a way to do it more palatable, so they don't go into this escapism and go through procrastination.
Yes. You take salespeople that are petrified to pick up that phone, and you start turning that into a game. And I went through that. I got to a point where I heard somebody knows it's like, I don't even want to do this anymore. I was blocking myself and doing anything else I could do other than doing it. And so, the management at the time was saying, Joe, you got to make phone calls. You're in sales. That's what you do. You got to make phone calls. So you got to reach out to people. And so I just started playing a game where I would go for like 5 no's a day. And I started playing it. Eventually, I'd move it to 10 no's a day, and I would start calling people, and I'd get no, and I'd check it off. No, check it off. No, check it off. 6 more, check it off. Check it off. And then I get somebody that goes, yeah, I'd like to meet with you. And I'd be like, oh, shit, that takes away one of my no's.
That is very interesting to check off the negatives. Wow. Okay, that's crazy.
I look for, 5 no's or 10 no's, whatever it is, the number doesn't matter, but I just go out looking for those. Now, all of a sudden, I'm more comfortable doing it. I don't feel like I have as much weight on my shoulders with every single call and every no. Every no doesn't drag me down to a pit. It's like, okay, cool. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Can I check back with you later? Blah, blah, blah. And then move on. And everything can fit like that. It's just our logical mind will say we have to get it done. If we don't get it done, there's a price to pay for that, and our job and our survival and feeding our family and all this stuff is like the weight of all that stuff. Rather than being, okay, I got no's today. That was my blip in my situation today. I'll try again tomorrow. I'll try again tomorrow.
Some of the stuff is just resonating with me. So I'll give a little anecdote. I left school my sophomore year basically because I didn't know what the heck I was doing there. I wasn't learning anything. And I had my guidance counselors and teachers that I really respected look at me in the eye and go, Brett, you're not learning. You're coming to class, you're going through the motions, your grades aren't horrible. They're not great, but they're not horrible, but you're just not learning. And I'm like, wow, that's an interesting thing. So I got a job like anybody was. And I found out I got really excited because it was this, I was going to become a stockbroker, Series 7, Series 63 licensed stockbroker. And I found this company that would take me on as a 20-year-old kid, and these guys were making dollars. I don't know if you ever saw the movie Boiler Room with Giovanni Ribisi, Vin Diesel, and that was it. That's exactly the place I worked. Right? Exactly the place I worked. Those guys were making big money. So all right. So yeah, and I walked in there and spent 3 months getting all my licenses and stuff. And then they said, okay, forget about everything. But I remember sitting there and listening to all these guys on the phone. One guy was very, very like nonchalant. He's your best buddy. His name was Jeff Schaefer. And he would be like, he'd get the guy on the phone, he'd get through the screener, and he's like, oh, Betty. Never met the girl before in her life. Betty, what's going on? Hey, let me talk to John. I just need to talk to him for a few minutes. Oh, it's Jeff from Chatfield Dean. Jeff. She's like, huh? It's like, come on, we've talked to him 100 times before. Just let me have him on the phone. He'd get him to the phone. Sure. I was getting through the screener. Then the guy gets on, yo, John. Hey, it's Jeff from Chatfield Dean. How you doing? Hey, how's the wife? Good. All right, that's great. I mean, hey, let me tell you why I'm calling. But it was very nonchalant. Then we had the probably one of the best producers in the thing, and he would literally be like a machine. He'd be like, he'd be on and he'd like, hey, this, and this is Andrew from Chatfield Dean. If I find something in the market that might interest you, I'm going to call you back. Fair enough. Okay, great. I'm going to have my assistant send you a packet, and he's going to be on with you right now. He's going to grab your address and stuff. Okay, wait, click. Then next person. Hey, this is Andrew from Chatfield Dean. If I find something in the market, I'm going to call you back with it. Okay, good. All right, I'm going to have my assistant's going to get on with you, get your address and phone number. We're going to send you a brochure right now. And he was like, so when you said things work for other people in the way that they worked, this guy was numbers. The other guy was like, no, I'm going to create a relationship.
Some guys who are like the whiners and they almost get people to sign based on feeling bad.
The one guy was like, oh man, hey, listen, I'm just I'm 500 shares down. Just pick up these shares,
Yeah.
And then you had those guys that had like balls of steel, basically. And I heard this guy say it. He says, listen, we got to dig deep on this one. We got to dig deep. And they're like, no. What do you mean, no? Listen, I'll tell you what. Put your hand between your legs. Do you feel something there? Well, then we have a deal.
And so that's a great analogy, Brad, and that's what stands me apart from so many other business development, business growth type of programs and coaches and things like that out there, is what so many people do is they take one of those ways of doing those, and they'll teach everybody that's how you get success.
Right.
But it never works for most people. It might for a few, but it doesn't work for most people. What the SMT method and the way I coach, it's about let's find your unique way of doing things. That's you. Not me, not somebody else. It's you.
And I'm going to put that out to people to sit there and say, listen, if you don't have a coach that is at least one part asking about your life, your circumstances, what you go through, and trying to create a plan for you and your circumstances, maybe not as deep as what Joseph is talking about right now, but they should be at least asking you about what is going on, what are your circumstances, so that when they do create a plan for you or they create a program for you, they should be at least somewhat getting personal about it. But if you're going to a coach and they're giving you a generic plan, and they're just saying, oh, well, I have this plan, I'm just going to give it to you, don't waste your money. You need someone like Joseph who will sit down with you, figure out what exactly makes you tick, and creates a plan specifically for you, not for everybody. So like he said, if you're hearing about this is the way you do it, this is the way everybody's been doing it, this is the way that all my clients have been doing it, step away. I would say that right now, step away.
And the one thing I would say to that, because you said maybe not as deep as I go, but you know what? It's not really deep as you're doing it. All it's doing is bringing alignment, because like I said, the conscious mind is your knowing of what you want. The subconscious is what triggered the brainwave. So that's the doing part. So all we're doing is aligning the knowing and the doing. We're closing that gap between them in what we do. And it's not drudgery. It's not hard. It's not things like that. We're coming from a vision with excitement. So it's exciting as we start opening up and achieving more and things like that. It's not a fighting to get somewhere. It's a journey of excitement in the unfolding of.
Well, I'm glad you corrected me on that then.
No, that's okay.
That's good. No, that makes, yeah, it's the way that you made it sound, the going to the vision board. I just keep thinking of, you're talking about your life. You know what I mean? I just keep feeling like we got to figuring out these steps on how to get there. So first would be the first level would be like 30,000 foot level. And then you get to the 10,000 foot level where you've got to, okay, what habits do we need to create to get us to that next level?
Yeah, that's all in the workings of it. And when I do a vision, a dynamic vision with somebody, I always look 3 to 5 years out.
Right.
We look at what we want our life to look like in a year from now. It's so tied to our situations and circumstances.
Right.
We're going to come up with a mediocre vision at best. When we start looking out there, we know in 3 to 5 years, your whole life, everything in your life can change. It doesn't mean it needs to take 3 to 5 years to come to fruition. We look out there to widen the vision, to get a bigger vision. And it's really the ultimate in there is, what do you want your life to be like? What do you want it to be like, health and well-being? What do you want it to be like with relationships, your vocation? Like, what do you want your time, money, freedom, like availability and things like that to be? And we tie that into what becomes the dynamic vision. And there's road mapping tools and everything through it. So it really sparks some really exciting ideas when people start realizing, this is all I'm asking for, this little bit, but I really want this. And I can ask for that. It's almost like that permission granted to start thinking bigger and start possibilities and potentials.
That is a great way to end this segment. That's fantastic. You just kind of laid it all out. And I'm going to tell everybody that if you don't at least go to josephdrolshagen.com and take a look at this website and all his testimonials, then you're missing out. And he's got his programs are on there. He's got great information on his blog, but definitely go check that out. I will have a link in the show notes. Again, josephdrolshagen.com. And he has a coaching consulting group called IFGT Coaching Consulting. And that's directly tied to that URL. Go check it out.
You want to know what the IFGT stands for, Brad?
What is it?
Now, remember, I started these works at 22 years old.
Right.
I've been doing it the last 10 years. The IFGT stands for it's fucking go time.
Love it. Oh my God.
Time to quit, like living through that conditioning. It's time to change stuff and really launch forward in life.
Wow. I love that. That's fantastic. Yes. Yeah, I'm all about that too. I'm like, let's go to the wall. Let's get this done. I'm like, let's get on the toe the freaking start line and finish strong. And I'm all about that. Fantastic. All right. Well, you heard it from here. You heard it from Joseph. You've heard it from me. And Joseph, thank you so much for parting your wisdom on us today. And definitely, again, go check out josephdrolshagen.com and go check that out. I'm going to tell you, it's going to be worth your while.
Yeah, and this has been an incredible conversation, Brad. I really appreciate this. If anybody I love talking this stuff. So if anybody decides that you want to talk more about this, you got something you want to run by me where I might be able to help you, you can go to smtmethod.com and schedule a time that we can talk.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm on all the social media platforms. You can find me there under.
Is there one more active than the other?
I would say probably LinkedIn, but really the one I follow closer is probably Facebook.
Okay. So there you go. And I will put all of his, if you've been a LCC fan, Life Changing Challengers fan, you'll know that I always put all of their links in the show notes for every single one of their social media and all of their websites and everything, and then ways to contact them. So go ahead and check that out in the show notes as well. Joseph, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And for all of you, if you would do us a favor, and if you're catching this on YouTube, give us a share and a like. And if you want to subscribe, if you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify, go ahead and give us a nice review. Or you know what? Don't give us a bad review. So I know what I need to make changes on, and that's fine too. So feedback is feedback. I don't care whether it's good or bad. But other than that, thank you so much. And for the rest of you, we'll see you in the next one.
Thank you, Brent.